What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of 4th and 15. I am Mel. Thank you all for joining me. We hope you're staying warm and we hope you guys and everything going. And it's a beautiful day outside of the cold weather. I see the wind blowing from my office window. However, I like to bring on a guy who's a friend of the show, very good guy, and also very knowledgeable in the world of college football, Mike Waxman. Mike, thank you for joining.
How's it going? Thanks for having me again.
As always, you're always welcome. You know that. Um, so we got a lot to talk about, and we'll get started. Division 3. John Carroll advances monumental playoff win against Mount Union a week ago. They beat Barry yesterday, 21 to 12, I believe, was the last I saw the score. However, the question I have is this the momentum we were looking for while John Carroll beat, or is this just a fresh start so everything's falling into place?
I don't know. I watched a lot of the game. There was that weird third quarter where it seemed like every other play they were giving the ball back to each other. And I said, no one wants to win this game, even though John Carroll was pretty much in control of it from once they got up by like 14. That was pretty much, I think Barry wasn't going to come back and score a lot of points. But um, I don't know. I really think that getting past Mount Union, which I don't know if even the staunchest JCU fans would have thought that was going to happen, especially after the way Mount went down and scored on their first drive, had the ball on the second drive, and looked like they were really going to roll. Um, so I don't know. I think it has given them confidence, certainly. And now they got to do it again because North Central has kind of been the perennial the last few years. North Central has been the team to beat. And on the other side, Johns Hopkins has looked as good as anybody in the Division III playoffs. So if they can pull off a second upset and get past North Central, they're probably going to have Johns Hopkins waiting for them, and they have been just kind of on a bit of a roll themselves.
Yeah, speaking of Johns Hopkins, they beat Susquehanna 40-10. Took the steam out of that one. They blow out Susquehanna by 30 points. And again, you said North Central. So Central is one of those teams, past national champion within the last 3 years, and national championship appearance, I believe, was last year. This is it looks like we're seeing the parity, but we're not seeing the norm. And the norm would be Mount Union in the
Yes.
Division 3 or in the Division 3 semifinals or the championship. So we're not seeing the norm, but we are seeing the parity, which is something I like. But as a Mount Union, kind of sucks. But again, this is the norm. This is the new norm because we did mention a while back. Everybody's getting tired of Mount Union, and it's not Mount Union's fault. But when everybody's tired of you, now you got a problem. And speaking of the Mount Union of the world, I do have to ask you on this note, what do they do to fix the playoff problem?
As far as I mean, there are multiple problems with most of the playoffs. So you probably need to pinpoint down which specific one is it that you're
Well,
talking about? Because in my
for
mind,
Mount
there are a
Union,
number of problems with the playoffs.
for Mount Union, I'll say what do they need to do to fix the problem of getting eliminated before hitting the semifinals or not coming with the hardware?
Um, I don't know if it's a problem. I mean, certainly that's a rivalry, and I know that they had talked a lot when John Carroll left the conference that they're ducking, they don't want to play Mount Union anymore. That's why they're changing conferences. And I know John Carroll kind of tucked that away in case they would meet in the postseason. And I think they used a lot of that as fuel. I don't know that there's a problem so much as it was just kind of like an odd game. If you watched it, Mount Union looked like not dominated, but I think had the better of it offense. They were able to more consistently move the ball. There was a missed field goal at the end of the game that sent it into overtime. Um, And so it was just kind of an odd game. And so I don't know that it's so much a problem as it is just this particular time. I think JCU just got the better of them. Now, if we'll know next year if this becomes a chronic thing and Mount Union's losing in the quarters like next year and the year after. Okay, there's probably going to need to be a recalibration, but it also may not be as much them going down as others coming up. That's what they were hoping for when they expanded the FBS playoffs, was not only putting 12 teams in, because we know at least 4 or 5 of them are just kind of sacrificial lambs and they don't really have a chance to win anything. But to see a team like Indiana came up. Ohio State didn't fall down, and Oregon didn't fall down, and Georgia didn't fall down. Teams like Indiana and Texas Tech, they came up. So that could be what's happening at the D3 level too, that Mount Union is not necessarily getting worse. Others are getting better.
I agree with that because the last 10 years or so, Mount Union, the only thorn in the side in the OAC has been John Carroll. So, and that does consider, I would consider that a problem because, it's one team you're used to beating and then they get the better of you at the biggest stage. And, they're going to hold on to that for at least another year if you don't see them in the regular season. So I would, Mount Union fans, this would be something to hold on to. And if you're a Mount Union player, this would be something to hold on to because they got the better of you. And not only do they get the better of you, they're going to hold on to this until whenever you see them again. So me personally, I'm all for the way this looks. I don't want the norm to come back. I just want the norm to look like it should, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So with that, the semifinals for Division III go as John Carroll will head to Illinois to face North Central. That time is to be determined. The other side of that bracket, Wisconsin RF
River Falls.
River Falls. There you go.
Yeah.
Wisconsin River Falls will be hosting Johns Hopkins, and that time will be determined as well. But the semifinals are set, and we know be there. We know who's not going to be there. So this should make an interesting D3 playoff semifinal / Stag Bowl appearance for anybody who makes it through.
Yeah, and you got to think John Carroll would love it because it's basically down the street from them in Canton. If they can somehow get there, whoever wins on the other side, they're going to have a pretty decided advantage in terms of crowd.
That is all great point because we actually put in our application for this as well. The Stag Bowl will be down at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton. So for those of you who are John Carroll fans, you are hoping for a John Carroll upset because North Central, from what I have seen on all of the dockets and all of the layouts for this game, North Central is the favorite at home against John Carroll. And obviously, Johns Hopkins is obviously the heavy favorite going on the road, but you're going to old Wisconsin. So don't be surprised if that game looks ugly weather-wise. All right, moving on to Division II, as we literally saw punches thrown in the Newberry game. Now, keep in mind, Newberry was coming off a big upset as they defeated Albany State the week before. And I'm going to call it an upset because nobody expected Albany State to make it that far. And because Albany State made it that far and they were in the game up until the turnovers happened. Mm-hmm. So, Newberry upsetting Albany State in Albany, which is despite what people believe, Albany State is a very hostile place to play because, one, that crowd is really there. Like, that crowd is on top of you. Not only is the crowd on top of you, the band is there. So I don't think Newberry was ready for that, but they weathered the storm. They got the win. And they have to go to Cold Fair State up in Michigan, and try as they might, They lose, they get hammered. Let's call it what it was. They got hammered. And then punches
Mhm.
were thrown after uh, the quarterback for Fair State scores a touchdown and they level him. Like he's 2 steps, 3 steps into the end zone and they just drop him. And then punches were thrown. I think a player was ejected. A player or two were ejected. What are thoughts on that? Because this isn't the first time we've seen a fight during a football game this year.
No, and I think that obviously if you're getting beat that bad, there's a little bit of frustration. That said, you really need to save that stuff for after the game. There's not between the white lines, hit hard, be within the rules. If you want to maybe send a message and be outside the rules one time, maybe do a hard hit, but you don't just go up and like punch a guy. That's just not the way you do it. And I'm sure that the point spread had a little bit to do with it because they, as you said, they were kind of getting dog walked. So um, it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure that if they get suspended, it'll carry over into next season because there's no more games for them for this year. So you can't really, no punishment doled out this year is going to do anything.
Right.
So you got to assume they're probably going to miss the opener next year. And depending on who they get, maybe that ends up being the difference in a tough game. Maybe they start the year 0-1 because they lose a player or two.
And that was the crazy part about it. Cause it's like, dude, that one, the way they hit him, it was a 2-man hit
Mm-hmm.
from both sides. So it was like, okay, I get it. You're frustrated. We've all been there. I've taken beatings before. Mike, I'm sure in high school, college, you've taken. But the thing about it is you have to understand that's going to cost not only you, but the team. You're already getting throttled.
Mm-hmm.
Why put yourself in a position where you may miss a game or two? Not just, and those games might be serious head on, like the first of the year, because the way the landscape is changing, you don't get cupcakes anymore. Not even in Division 2. You're not getting a cupcake team. You're getting legit to go that far. The game is already out of hand. You were already losing 38-13 or whatever it was. And you hit him. Now they're mad. And, you know, it's just, I didn't think it was worth it. Like in the game, I didn't think it was worth it.
No, it definitely wasn't.
Well, you got a whole lot of time to think about that in this offseason because you got beat on pretty 39-17. And on the other side of the D2 bracket, I got to send a special shout out to my homie Christopher Medina, former player, and if I believe my coach Bernie Nowatarski, he was a former Cutstown Bear as well. I got to send it to them, even though I took a hammering too, 49-27. This was actually a battle of both number 1 seeds, which
Mm-hmm.
was interesting because you hardly ever see a battle of seeds in the bracket make it this far. So
Right.
watching that game, I thought Cutstown had it in hand, but again, overs happen. And once you get the turnover battle in favor of your opponent, it kind of is hard to make it back to even footing. And Harding took advantage of that.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, I mean, you can sometimes turn the ball over and it doesn't come back to get you. But if you're playing a Ferris State or you're playing a Harding and you're giving the ball away, you're making your job already harder than it was. And it was a pretty high mountain to climb in the first place. Cutstown probably would have needed like 2 or 3 Andre Reeds.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Shout out to Andre
Now the
Reed.
D2.
He's a Cutstown alum.
Shout out to Andre Reed, one of the best receivers that does not get enough credit in the NFL.
Correct.
Let's just call that what it is. One of the best receivers that does not get, and he played in a of nothing but those guys.
Yep.
What Michael Irvin, Jerry,
Yeah, that list
Herman
back
Moore.
then could have gone about 15 or 20 deep with just dogs at receiver.
Exactly, and he ain't beat that. They
He
lost
he
all
he to
four,
me is
but
he
the
to me
fact
is
that
like
you
the
got
Curtis
there
Martin
4
at
straight
receiver.
times.
he to me is like the Curtis Martin at receiver. Curtis Martin doesn't get enough, I think, run at running back, and I think he's kind of like the Curtis Martin of receivers.
I can agree. I can imagine that scenario, that assessment, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. So shout out to Chris, shout out to Coach Bernie, shout out to Andre Reed. D2 championship is set. Ferris State, Harding, December 20th, and I gotta go with Ferris State, man. It's been on a tear since they won.
They have. I mean, Harding certainly is a team that is used to being here, but Ferris has just seemed like they've taken it to another gear, which there were times during the season you're thinking, can these guys play any better? And they kind of have. And so I would probably give the nod to Ferris State, although Harding is not going to let them just walk over with things. I think it's going to be a pretty good competitive game. I wouldn't be shocked if it's like a touchdown game.
I don't doubt that it will be competitive. What I doubt, the fact that Harding is ready for the machine that we all know is Ferris State. Again, since winning last, I think the most that Ferris has given up is about 22 points.
Yeah.
And even that was probably in garbage time. Looking at their schedule, that was in garbage time. It had to be, because you don't just score on Ferris State and then think they're going to just let that. Like watching yesterday, and I believe it was the first end of the first or the second quarter, and then Ferris just was like, "Yeah, no, that don't work. It's not working like that." And scored another 20 unanswered points, and now we're looking at a 38-13 game. 38, well, it was 38-12 or something like that. Whatever the case was, we're looking at a Ferris State that is out for blood, and they haven't lost all year.
That they have not.
All
You got to
right.
wonder. I mean, they did it last year with Trinidad Chambliss, now at Ole Miss. So wonder if any of their other players are going to take that big leap in the offseason, maybe up to the SEC or up to the Big Ten or anything.
That might be something that we keep an eye on in the offseason, because there are already players hitting the portal. So
yes,
this is something to keep an eye on. Move FCS. I know you were waiting on this. Villanova hat on.
Yes.
Yes. We'll actually start. I'm going to start with the Celebration Bowl. SWAC versus South Carolina State pulls off the upset, wins the Celebration Bowl, which is technically
came through for me because in my ESPN bracket in the bowl pick'em, I had them, and when Prairie View goes up 21-0, I said, "Well, guess I missed that one." And South Carolina comes back. Then when they got the interception in the overtime, and Prairie View's lineup for the field goal, I said, "Okay, I've lost again," and the guy missed the field goal. So I was happy.
In the kicker.
Yeah, when it's college kicker, you typically have a situation, so you don't want to do that. So I was happy with the outcome, because after the Washington game last night, robust 2-0 in my bowl pick'em pool. Now watch, I'll probably end up 2-40, but at least I got the first two. You can't go 3-0 until you go 2-0.
True that. Fair enough. Fair enough. I will say this though. For those that are not in the know, the Celebration Bowl is the de facto Black College or HBCU national championship. I'm actually going to bring up something in a sports short that I'm working on a little bit later about that, because I think this could actually work. But were you surprised? I know you were pulling for South Carolina State, but going into the game, were you surprised that South Carolina State was able to weather the Prairie View storm? Because as we saw throughout the course of the season, Prairie View team, very scrappy team, and they pulled off some upsets themselves, beating the likes of Grambling, who was actually in to be a top of the SWAC, and then they ended up beating Jackson State. Were you surprised at that upset?
I was, especially when the starting quarterback went out. I mean, he hadn't been super effective in the early drives, but going out, I said, "Oh, geez, they got to go to their second team guy." And what does he do? He just gives them life. I mean, I think they said that they were in the red zone 5 times and they scored 5 times. So they couldn't get past the 50-yard line with the starter, and then he goes out and they bring in the backup, and it's like, wow, it's like it's almost like the offense got entirely energized. It was almost like it was a new offense.
As much as I hate to say that, like, when you think about it, because Bryce Young got hurt, Tua comes in, Alabama's offense looked totally different, and then championship. How does that even work? And honestly, I'm gonna say this: I was surprised because normally, and I'm only saying this because historically, we generally see how the SWAC treats the MEAC when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
football. So,
Right.
I was expecting Prairie View to just drag South Carolina State through the mud. And it's not because Carolina State can't hang with them. It's because we've literally seen SWAC treats the MEAC during
Mm-hmm.
football season. It's not pretty. It is honestly, it's for in some games. It's like two different levels. It's like Ohio State playing a MAC squad. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those games where you're just like, all right, we just hope y'all put up a fight, but we know the outcome. And then they surprise me, and South Carolina goes off the upset. So shout out to South Carolina State. Got to give them their flowers where they do. All right, moving on. There was uh, a few upsets. Stephen F. Austin got beat by Montana State on, and to be fair, that's not really an upset because one, it's State. Montana State's used to being in the playoffs. They're used to being this far in the playoffs. But you let Stephen F. hang around, and that kind of worries me. I don't know about you. I'm gonna let you take over, but that does worry me. Like,
Yeah. There are teams that you should be better than, and we've seen it before. You futz around, it's a game into the third quarter. You're thinking, okay, now we'll put the gas pedal down. Oh, all of a sudden, you can't get it going because you fooled around too long, or you turn the ball over, there's a fumble. That's kind of what happened with Tarleton State yesterday. I think Tarleton State was their offense had been lights out all year, and they had a couple of turnovers, a couple of hiccups where they maybe didn't convert on fourth down. Villanova, another team that weathered the early storm and came back. And I think that you're right. Playing around with a team that you probably should beat will end up having a pretty poor outcome a lot of the time.
yeah. And speaking of Tarleton State, I got to give a special shout out to another coach, Coach Peppy Pearson, who is the assistant coach and the running backs coach over at Tarleton State. Got there. He got to the quarterfinals. The team, because I watched most of this game, the team looked good,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Villanova. And for those, shout out to my brother Ronnie Henry, because we we as sportsmen, we know Villanova as a Hooper school, basketball
Mm-hmm.
school. For those that are not in the link, Villanova's a Hooper school, and they showed up. They weathered the storm, but the fact that they showed up, and I don't mean they just got to the stadium, they put their uniform. These guys went blow for blow with Tarleton State in Tarleton State's hometown or home stadium. Crowd was ruckus. Uh, Tarleton State's offense for a while looked really, really mean. Like they meant business. And Villanova was able to weather that storm. Defensively, they came up with a couple of turnovers and a couple of stops. And the offense basically gave them what they needed to win this game. They were down a point, they get the touchdown. And what what makes me happy for Villanova is the fact they did not give up.
Yeah, they actually they stayed in their game plan. A lot of the times you get down by a couple of scores, you'll go away from what you are. And Villanova has pretty much been a controlled offense. Jabril Mace, who I think had 150 yards or something like that. He also was a nice little underneath safety valve for the quarterback. I think he caught 3 or 4 passes. Um, Villanova did not deviate from what they were just because they were down 2 scores. And I think when Tarleton saw that, it early on when Villanova didn't score, it wasn't necessarily Tarleton's defense that was keeping them from doing it. There was a penalty on a drive that backed them up. And I think there's research that if there's a penalty on a drive, I think you're like 65%
Drive
less
killer.
likely to score. It's
Yeah, it's a
it
drive
just
killer.
puts you behind. Even if it's a minor thing like a false start, 5 yards is 5 yards, and
Yeah.
yards are at a premium. And so if you're committing a penalty on first or second down, it makes the hole even bigger. So Villanova was kind of shooting itself in the foot early on. And when the running game got going and when the controlled passing game got going, I think Tarleton saw their defense a couple of times looked like they were lost. I don't think that they knew exactly what was going on. And I know that Villanova averaged, I think, close to 6 yards a carry on the ground. So they kind of out toughed them. They brought in that Northeast toughness into Texas, which a lot of the time you hear about Texas ball, especially with Tarleton State's offense, a little more of a finesse, throw it all over the place and all that. And Villanova said, hey, we're going to show you toughness wins.
And because that was like the best part of the game was seeing that Tarleton State thought they had answers. Villanova would say, no, we got this. Let me show you how it's done. And the fact that it's not a shootout in terms of score, but it was a shootout in terms of who's got the better play, who's going to make the better play. And in the end, your hat said it all. Villanova made the better play. So shout out to Villanova. You guys get your flag.
Howie Long is probably happy today.
Is he? I
He's
forgot
he's a Villanova guy.
I forgot that. I definitely forgot. I'm so used to seeing him in a Raiders uniform. Oh man,
I always wanted his haircut. When he's on TV, that flat top he's got, it's like that is a pretty cool haircut. Now, he's 60 years
he's
old
the
now. I
only
don't know
guy.
if it's quite as cool.
But he's the only guy that can pull that off. Are you
True.
going to tell the buzz cut doesn't work?
No,
Are
I'm
you
not
going to
going to
tell
tell
him
him.
flat top doesn't work?
And I've thought about myself, do I want to get that? It's like I'm not shaped like Howie Long, so I probably won't do it.
And he's still built. He's still built like a robot. So yeah,
He
he's the only
looks
guy that
like
can
he could
pull
play.
the high top off.
Yeah, he looks like he could still play.
Test that theory. My days are done. I'm done playing. All right, moving on to the next quarterfinal. Or the Grizz, as we all know them. Montana handles South Dakota 52-22. I a lot to say about this game because it's Montana, and I'm not being funny when I say that, but we've known Montana to be Montana in the playoffs. So it was business
Yeah,
to me watching that game. It looked like it was business as usual.
it was, and especially the way it's opened up without North Dakota State and South Dakota State, I would be and weird stuff has happened. I mean, we see Illinois State getting in to the Final Four, so I'm not trying to count my chickens before they hatch, but you would have to say that given what has happened the last 2, 3, 4 years, and the fact that Montana has been an FCS champion before, you have to think that the Grizz are going to be favored. But when it's a redo of the Brawl of the Wild version 2, you can never say that anything is a given because, as you see in rivalry games, the underdog can win just as easily as the favorite can.
Very true. Very true. Also, again, this was one of those scenarios where I have to be remiss in saying that, you know, um, the fact that it's Montana shows me that they're tired of losing. They're tired of not being where they're used to being, which is in the
Mhm.
championship. I'm expecting Montana to handle business. Now, just because I expect it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But knowing what we know about the Grizz historically, you can't count them out. And speaking, because you brought up Illinois State, speaking of Illinois State, they win a shootout with UC Davis, 42-31. And I honestly got to say, I'm not surprised. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well,
Illinois State is the team off North Dakota State.
yes, they definitely are. And I think that I'm not surprised now. After what they've done to North Dakota State, they're playing with house money. So anything they do beyond this time can't really be a surprise. I mean, if you knock off the Kingpin, everyone is saying this is North Dakota State's best team in years, and Illinois State knocks them off, especially when North Dakota State had a lead. I think that you have to kind of say Illinois State can do pretty much whatever it wants to now, and nothing would be a surprise.
Yeah, I feel that. And again, they knocked off North Dakota State with obviously the shock of the football world at the time because everybody was expecting North Dakota State to just run through everybody and get Final Four, and we'll see what happens. But this was one of those teams that North Dakota State ran into where they're not used to seeing them, and they're a real answer for a team that you're not used to seeing. They're used to seeing Montana. They're used to seeing North
Mm-hmm.
Dakota, South Dakota. They're used to seeing North Dakota. This was a different tune, if you will, for North Dakota State getting so pulled the up. I think all of them shifted from North Dakota State to Illinois State. So basically an energy transfer
Yeah.
because when you saw how North Dakota State was like defeated visual facial expressions, the body language. I think they gave Illinois State a lot of confidence to say, hey, we can take this all the way.
Yep, I would agree.
Shout out to
Again,
Illinois.
yep, they are not going to be at all surprised if they bring home the crown. The public at large can be surprised. Illinois State is not going to be surprised because they believe they can do it. And confidence can be a dangerous thing for an opponent.
I agree because you when you see a lot of teams, they pretty much are telling you, give me your best shot, and I'll give you mine. Last man standing wins.
I think the winner of the Montana State game is probably going to take it home, especially if it's Montana, because of some of the stuff you said. They're used to winning. They say this is our time now, especially the way their side of things opened up. They were probably expecting to see North Dakota State in the finals or the semifinals, and that didn't happen. So I think Montana says the time is now. I think Montana will
Yeah,
probably
clear
win.
path.
But on the other side, I mean, Villanova kind of went and pulled the upset against Tarleton, and Illinois State has actually pulled off two upsets. So either way, you're having a team that the public did not expect to be on the other side of the bracket. And we've seen Cinderella stories before. I think in the end, Montana is probably going to have too much. If Montana State somehow pulls the upset, then it's anybody's guess because I think Villanova and Illinois State can match up better with Montana State than they can with Montana.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate on this one. Knowing what we know, I think there is a strong possibility that Illinois State could possibly play with any of the either team out of that side of the bracket between Montana and Montana State. Reason being is because their defense is fast. Because
Yeah.
their defense is fast, it gives them an advantage because when they swarm to the ball, it's not 2 or 3 guys, it's about 6 or 7 guys swarm. So if they were to play Montana State will have to have a fast enough offense to where they can beat Illinois State, which is where most teams have had a problem playing. You saw it in the North Dakota State game. North Dakota State had a problem and a very tough time getting to the edge, which is actually good at all season with the running game. Didn't happen against Illinois State. I want to see how that looks. Should Illinois State be able to beat Villanova?
Yeah, because I mean
Oh,
Villanova has a quick back too. So that's one. Villanova, at least their back has some speed. Their receivers are more possession guys, so they're not really going to beat you downfield. But their back, once he gets to that first hole, he can take off. So that is one that I'm interested to see that matchup. Illinois State's linebackers, if they're blocked and get caught up in the wash, Villanova has a back that can kind of take it to the house.
and the best thing about these Final Fours games is the best thing I like about this is that all 4 games and all 4 teams are cold weather teams. So no game is in a dome.
Yes.
No game is in the dome because I didn't got so used to seeing everybody playing the Fargo Dome. It's just like, dude, come on. But now both Final Four games are literally cold weather games. I want to see this play out. And then January 5th, we will see who makes it to the championship and who takes on the hardware. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, something interesting happened last night. I dare not want to talk about it, but we have to anyway. So when we come back, we will do what happened last night in the world of college football. So stick right there. You're watching 4th and 15 with Mel and Mike Waxman here on the 216 Sports Network.
Got a taste for something sweet? Planning a party? Or just want a midnight snack? Clarissa's Confections is a local treat maker here in Cleveland and has made many delectable and delicious treats for the young and old. Her treats are made to order and can be customized to your needs at any occasion. To place your orders, email her at sweetsbyclarice@gmail.com or call her at 440-805-4303. If you're looking for a good brand of clothing at affordable prices, then TGBG is just for you. Hats, shirts, hoodies, and custom gear all at your fingertips. And just in time for the weekend is Free Ship Friday. Free shipping on all orders. Just use the code FREESHIPFRIDAY at checkout. And all Godfidence items are 10% off. Head on over to tgbgbrand.com and get your orders in for your custom clothing now. TGBG is the official outfitter of the 216 Sports Network. TGBG, to God be the glory. Are you a team looking for a new look on the sideline this season? A company looking for a more casual look? Or just trying to introduce something new to your closet space? TGBG is the brand for you. Jackets, polos, hoodies, and everything in between. TGBG has the clothing you need to serve a purpose for every occasion. To place your orders, contact them on Facebook and Instagram. Check out their website at www.tgbgbrand.com. Email them at tgbgbrand@gmail.com or call them at 440-470-4234. TGBG is also the official outfitter of the 216 Sports Network. TGBG, to God be the glory.
And we are back. Now, let's go back a little bit. Because a while back, shout out to Rico McGee of the Rulers Minute. He mentioned and made an actual video about this, that the quarterback class of this year, 5/26, wasn't a lot to write home about. However, there was one thing that happened that no one expected to happen, and that was Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman. So shout out to Fernando Mendoza. not only did Fernando Mendoza win the Heisman, he was the very first Indiana Hoosier. I don't even know what a Hoosier is, but he was the first Hoosier to actually ever win the Heisman. Now, why are we giving him his flowers and why are we giving the University of Indiana their flowers? Simple. The last time before Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman, the last great quarterback that they had was a man who ended up playing receiver in the NFL, the name of Antoine Randall, who was also a Heisman candidate, but
Yes.
because there was a guy named what was that year? When 98? So because there was a guy that won it by the of Charles Woodson, he didn't get it. I'm a little bit surprised because Julian saying stats were better, even though the head-to-head matters in Heisman voting. I don't care what anybody says. Obviously, it matters. Julian saying lost to Fernando Mendoza, and Fernando Mendoza did a lot for Indiana by giving them their right Big Ten championship for the first time since 1967, I believe.
Yeah.
And they got their first win over Ohio State in over 30.
I think it was 1988.
So,
yeah.
So 30.
Well, I don't know if they played
37
every year. I think it was
years?
like 30. I think it was like 30 in a row. It was the longest FBS streak over one opponent. I think Ohio State had won 30 in a row. They hadn't played every year, but I think it was 88. I think it was Anthony Thompson. Darkest Day 2 was the last time Indiana beat Ohio State.
Well, I can't say blind squirrel finds a nut in that situation. It's just, it was due. Let's just call it what it is. It was due. It was bound to happen. Was I mad about the loss? Yes, I was, because you don't lose to Indiana, man. It's Indiana. But the fact that Mendoza willed his team and essentially was the offense, and I'm not saying that to discredit anybody else on Indiana's offensive side, but when you have a quarterback that makes good decisions, hardly ever turns the ball over, and is a leader in the locker room, those are three components that legitimately help the team. And that's exactly what happened, and that's exactly what he did. It's Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. It also catapulted Indiana to number one. And weird even saying that.
Yeah.
It's nothing against Fernando Mendoza. It's just weird saying from Indiana's, like from a perspective of an Ohio State fan, it's just weird saying it. We'll jump back.
It is. I mean, what Kurt Signetti has done is nothing short of amazing. It might be one of the 2 or 3 best turnarounds I've ever seen. I mean, Indiana came into this season as the losingest program in college football history. It's now out of the cellar. It's won 23 games the last 2 years.
But
and that's
think
something you
about
would
that,
expect like Alabama to do or Ohio State to do or a blue blood to do. You wouldn't say,
but listen,
okay.
I'm being funny when I say this, but listen to what you just said. They were the losingest program coming into this year.
Yep.
And they turned it around, win a conference championship, earned their first number 1 ranking ever.
Yes.
That's big.
It is
big. And I don't hate Indiana. But again, for those at home watching, for those that are going to watch this later on, you got to understand something. As a child watching college football, I knew 3 things were for certain. When Ohio State played Indiana, it wasn't going to be in Indiana's favor. And 9 times out of 10, when they played anybody else, like Michigan, was even Penn State, it was not going to be in their favor. You better hope that you got bowl eligible. The only time I remember in my lifetime seeing Indiana look like they could be a threat was when Antoine Randall was quarterback. And that God honest truth, you want to go back, I'm pretty sure There are videos of this on YouTube, full games. I found old full Ohio State games. So I know somebody's got a stack of Indiana games where Antoine Randall L was quarterback and they were a threat. They couldn't beat him, but they were a threat to Ohio State.
He was definitely a problem. I mean, he was kind of Slash version 2 for the folks who remember Cordell Stewart. He was the Big Ten's version of Slash.
And actually did it a little bit better because he, the creators usually get out created, if that makes any sense. But you mentioned something. You said you were undefeated so far in bowl games, and let's start with America's game, Navy, because I'm an Army. Navy wins the Commander-in-Chief trophy for back-to-back years for the first time. A Service Academy has done it since 2017 and 18 when Army did it.
Mm-hmm.
Navy wins the game 17-16 by 1 point. A call gets overturned, and I can't say I disagree with this call. And I'm actually glad the referees did their due diligence because this could have gave Army the leg up that they needed. There was a fumble. Navy's quarterback recovers it, stretches out, and then as you see it from a different angle, because referees were saying because the quarterback wasn't down and then found out he was down, shoulder and head were down, that counts as being down.
Mm-hmm.
Navy gets to keep the ball. They kneel it twice, game over. Commander-in-Chief trophy stays in Annapolis. So realistically, got to give their flowers for this because every year, Army and Navy have the best uniforms of the entire football season. And it's not even an argument.
No, there are years where I haven't liked both. I've maybe liked one more than the other. Yesterday, I loved Army's uniforms. That font that they had that looked like the Gothic font, that was outstanding. I like Navy's helmets better. And Navy's uniforms were fine. They didn't like pop out at me. I love the helmet. But Army with just the Gothic font and the numbers, I said, that looks pretty cool. And instead of the names on the back of the jerseys, it said United States Army. I just thought that was really cool. And it ended up, as it usually is, being a great dramatic game at the end with a couple of weird plays that could have really swung the balance either way.
It did. And that fumble was the one that stands out to me because that could have decided the game.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Army lost to Air Force. So had they won, I don't think the Commander-in-Chief trophy would have came home. But a win over Navy, anytime you can get one, is always good. But Go Navy, beat Army. Shout out to my sister, who's a retired retired Navy. So she gets this one. I'm probably going to hear about this for another year. But congratulations to the Navy. With that, bowl season started last night. Washington faced Boise State, and obviously it wasn't Boise State's day. They lose 38-10. It was not a game.
They did not have Ashton Ginty back there, and Washington got up by 2 scores early and never really looked back. And I don't normally tune out of a game. Third quarter, I said, Boise's not going to win this. I went to bed. And I woke up this morning, it was 38-10. It's like, okay, this ended the way that I thought it was going to end.
Hey, look, sometimes it happens, man. But
it does.
We've all known Boise State to be what you would call a bracket buster or a BCS buster at the time. But it comes to its point where, you got to rebuild. That's just all it is. You got to rebuild. And in the Mountain West, this was honestly the most competitive Mountain West in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Being honest. not since the years of what we knew as the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference.
Mm-hmm.
This was a pretty competitive year. Hawaii jumped out and surprised some people. San Diego
San Diego
State jumped
State,
out and surprised some people.
UNLV.
Shout out to Randall Cunningham, former UNLV Rebel.
Yep.
So this year for the Mountain West was pretty good. The what is this? The Salute to Veterans Bowl will be Tuesday, and then followed by Wednesday, the DNA Cure Bowl. Troy State and Jacksonville State will be in the Veterans Bowl, and Old Dominion in South Florida will be in the DNA Cure Bowl. Where do they the names for these bowl games? I'm not making fun of the bowl games. I just want to know.
All the corporate sponsors, and I do make fun of the bowl games. When I either write a piece on them or go on a show, if I can help it, if it's not actually the name, if it's like a sponsor name and then like Cure Bowl, I'll call it the Cure Bowl, but I'm not calling it the Rose Bowl presented by Tostitos. I'm calling it the Rose Bowl. I'm calling it the Orange Bowl. I'm calling it the Peach Bowl. I'm not calling it the Mylanta Cotton Bowl or anything like that. I'm calling it by what its name is. Shout out to Mylanta.
Fair enough.
No.
Fair enough. Fair enough. The best one so far to me has been the Cheez-It Bowl.
Yes.
Always going to be the Cheez-It Bowl.
Which narrowly beats out the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Anything that's food, I will watch.
I still don't get that one, but we're going to go with it. Pop-Tarts Bowl, yeah, we're going to leave it alone. All right. We're in FBS, but the aren't really what they used to be as a kid, so we're just going to pass over those until it's time. But what we are going to do is head on over to your bracket. And your bracket is obviously the top 12 that made it in. So the first round goes as such. James Madison goes to Oregon. Alabama will face OU. Ole Miss will face Tulane, and the Hurricanes will play Texas A&M. Now, you have, and this bracket's already been filled out by you, so
yep.
It's not the complete ESPN bracket. It is the College Football Focus bracket, and I gotta say, I'm a little interested in knowing your thought process in making this bracket, because obviously Tulane and James Madison are the first in Group of 5, but we'll come back to those because I have a big question. You have Texas A&M beating the Hurricanes. I need because I got a lot of questions, but I need answers.
I think that A&M is, first off, I think Mike Elko is a better in-game coach than Mario Cristobal is. I think both of them have trench play, both on the offensive line and the defensive line, that can cause problems for the other. I think that Miami's offensive line with Francis Mauigoa and Inez Cooper and some of the guys they have is really good. I think that A&M's line is really good and a veteran unit defensively. A&M leads the country in sacks. I don't think people realize that. I think they have 41 sacks. Miami has Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. So those two areas, I think, are pretty close. Where I see a difference is I think that A&M getting healthy with their running game with they've got Reuben Owens, and then they've got Le'Veon Moss. They've got a really nice two-headed monster. Miami has been really inconsistent with their running game, and say what you will about him being a veteran, I don't always love Carson Beck. Now, Malachi Toney, that guy can cause problems for people at receiver, and he's a freshman, he's electric, and if he gets loose, he scores. So he's kind of the wild card. I just think A&M has a few more weapons. They've got Casey Concepcion as kind of their wild card guy. He's really good on returns. He's also a really good receiver. He came over from North Carolina State. I would say the health of Marcel Reed, but they're going to have, 3 weeks since he hurt his ankle against Texas, and it didn't sound like it was a super bad injury. So I expect him to be healthy. I think it's a close game. And in close games, I go to coaching, and I think Elko is a better in-game coach than Cristobal is.
Okay, that explains that. So I give it to you on that. I'm not gonna say I disagree. I just think Miami's speed will play a big part in this game, just because Miami. Anytime Miami gets a big stage, generally they don't let you down. But this is not the old Miami. This is the new Miami. So we see. This is their first time in the college playoff. We'll see how it pans out. Tulane versus Ole Miss. Of Tulane. However, if this turns into a Tulane upset, I would not be surprised, because if we're being honest, it is a complete and utter shitstorm in Ole Miss locker room right now, to say the least.
It is, but you know what? I think there are some people who are probably happy that Lane is not there anymore. I think that as good of a coach as he is, I think he's a bit of an attention hound. I think he loved all of the stuff that was swirling around all this coaching stuff. And Pete Golding, who's now the coach, basically told him, just get the hell out. We'll handle this. And so I actually think the fact you didn't see a lot of Ole Miss guys go into the portal. Now, some of that could be because they're in the playoff and maybe guys will win it if they lose. But it didn't sound like there was a whole lot of discontent from the players. And we saw this game earlier in the year. Ole Miss won 45-10. There are 2 rematches in the first round. This was one of the big reasons I did not want expansion, because we saw Alabama or Oklahoma early in the season. Oklahoma won. And we saw Ole Miss and Tulane, and Ole Miss won definitively. So why do we need to see them again? Now, they could have just done a simple trick and flipped A&M and Ole Miss. I understand Ole Miss is the better team, but they do it in basketball sometimes. They will move a team a seed line if it's going to avoid a rematch. So why not make A&M 6 and make Ole Miss 7? That way you don't have the rematch there. You're still going to have Oklahoma and Alabama, because 8-9 you can't really do a whole lot with. But it at least would have gotten rid of one of the rematches. So be that as it may, I actually would be surprised if Tulane kept it close. Their defense is good. Jake Retzlaff has been better at quarterback than I thought he was going to be. But I just think Ole Miss has way too many athletes. Trinidad Chambliss at quarterback, Kewan Lacey, who was an All-American at running back for a lot of people. Their defense is better than it improved as the year went on. So this one would surprise me if it was, I'm not going to say blowout, but if this one is closer than 2 touchdowns, I'll be surprised.
I will too, but again, even though you're right about the locker room, the fact that it's still a proverbial storm over there, it does worry me as to how they're going to act on game day. Now, is that to say Ole Miss won't win? No. Yeah, it is interesting. Is it to say Ole Miss won't win? No. But if Tulane pulls the upset, you'll know that that's part of the reason why they got upset. Not saying it's going to happen. If it does, that will play a part in it. And I'm a firm believer on that.
Yeah, if one of the 2 mismatch games is going to be an upset, it's going to be that one.
I agree, because James Madison and Oregon are 2 different styles, and Oregon has more speed than James Madison. It's not James Madison. It's Oregon. Oregon is built for speed. And now that they're in the Big Ten, they know they need speed because for a long time, everybody gave Big Ten shit about not having speed, not realizing they do have speed. They just can't out at the time. They just couldn't out recruit Florida or Texas. And that these kids on those Florida and Texas rosters came from. Now that they can, Oregon can too. And Oregon's main recruiting is California. So where do you think those kids are going? So you got that. You got Oregon passing the test or passing the first game against James Madison. You got avenging their loss against Oklahoma. Interesting. And
well,
honestly,
if you remember that, if you remember that last game, Oklahoma really got outplayed from a production standpoint. There were a couple of turnovers that really shifted the balance of that game. That's not sustainable to win games, to count on turnovers every time. And say what you will about Alabama being inconsistent on offense. They do have, I think, they have the more fire. I mean, they still have Ryan Williams. Jeremy Bernard had a pretty good season. Ty Simpson, when he wasn't being harassed, when he has time to throw, he can really put the ball in tight spaces. And I think that the only way Oklahoma can win is if they throw the ball, and the best part of Alabama's defense is their secondary. I just don't think it's a really good matchup for Oklahoma. Even with John Mateer, their offense has really been inconsistent, kind of plodding, not a whole lot of big plays. And I think you need explosives to beat a team like Alabama.
Well, here's the thing. The quarterback, you mentioned Alabama's quarterback, and he's the bigger component for that Alabama offense. What did you say, Oklahoma, or what did you say about him? He has to not get harassed in order for him to have, the game that they're looking for. And looking at him last time, that was what helped Oklahoma with those turnovers because they were causing a lot of disruption in the front seven and on the line. So if Alabama, they might win this game. But if that quarterback for Alabama gets harassed again, this looks like it'll go in the favor of Oklahoma. I'm not saying Oklahoma's going to win, but if they can keep the pressure on Alabama when it's time to throw the ball, I think it'll be an advantage for them because you don't hardly ever see Oklahoma's defense be known to cause ruckus on the defensive line, and that's what they did against Alabama. So if Alabama does not correct that, I think Oklahoma has a good shot to win. Just being honest.
Yeah, I think this will be kind of a phone booth game, and as the score gets higher, Oklahoma has less of a chance to win. So if it stays in the 20s, like 21, 24, I think Oklahoma's got a shot. But if it gets to 28, 30, whatever, I think Alabama's going to win the game.
Fair enough. Time constraints are hitting me. So forward, you got Illinois. No, excuse me. You got Texas Tech beating Oregon, and you have Alabama losing to, and then Indiana beats Texas Tech or loses to Texas Tech, and at the bottom of this, you have Ole Miss losing to Georgia. You have beating A&M that would stretch their record over A&M to 5-0, and then you have Buckeyes beating Georgia and meeting Texas Tech in the national championship, and then Ohio. Please give us your take on how this happened.
So basically, and again, we have another rematch, Ole Miss Georgia. We saw that one earlier too. And Georgia is actually a team that's playing as well as anybody right now. They basically dominated Alabama. I've been on the Texas Tech bandwagon since the beginning of the year. I had them number 7 in my preseason rankings. I think I might have had them higher than anybody else. They are one of 2 teams, along with Indiana, to be in the top 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency. And I think that matters. I think if you're just dominant on one side, sure, that's great. But then when it's time for the offense to step up, you're gonna have issues. So I think Texas Tech Indiana could be a really good game. In the end, I think that Tech's ability to get to the passer, it's not just David Bailey. It's not just Lee Hunter. It's not just Romulo Height. It's all of them. And I think that is Indiana, as good as they've been, I don't know that their roster is composed that can make 3 wins in a row in a short time against top-notch competition. I mean, they played incrementally better than that. I mean, they didn't play a great game, and Ohio State didn't play a great game, and that was a 3-point game. I think if Ohio State is firing on all cylinders as it normally does, and sure, Indiana was a reason for some of the problems. But I think if Ohio State plays the way that it can, that's probably a touchdown, 10-point game in their favor. I just don't know if Indiana beats Alabama, then they got to come back the next week and beat a roster full of athletes in Texas Tech. Then they got to come back and beat Ohio State again, whereas Ohio State has a roster advantage over everybody, albeit against Georgia, it's a very minor one. But if you get to the final, I think Texas Tech's defensive line could cause problems for Ohio State's offensive line. We saw that that's how Indiana made their bread, 5 sacks of Julian Sayin. But I think Ohio State being there before with what they went through last year and the pedigree that Ohio State has in that they expect to win championships, I think in the end it would be a close game, but the resolve they had last year and the fact that they're going to kind of play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder again because they did not win the Big Ten championship, I think that's going to be enough to get them through. But I do think Texas Tech is legitimately a candidate to win the whole thing.
Fair enough. I outside of the Alabama and Indiana game, because I have Alabama beating Indiana in my bracket.
Yeah, and that wouldn't shock me if it happened.
Be interested to see this Texas Tech Alabama matchup. Should it happen? However, the only 2 games I really are feeling like are switch arounds are I see the Hurricanes playing the Buckeyes again in the Cotton Bowl. I also see Alabama playing in the Peach Bowl. So me personally, I'm leaning towards those 2. Those are my only 2.
Could certainly happen.
But this is your bracket, and I have to agree with most of it, even though those 2 are just like,
Just so people know, the last few times I filled out an NCAA tournament bracket for basketball, I finished near the bottom. So don't take these with any kind of take these with a grain of salt.
Fair enough. All right. With that is the end of our episode. We'd like to thank Mike Wachsman again with College Football Focus for being on. As always, love talking college football with you. Thank you again for being on. Appreciate you as always. Don't forget to follow Mike and College Football Focus on Twitter and Facebook at College Football Focus. He is all college football. So if any questions you got for that I don't happen to know, I'm guaranteeing you Mike will know.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me on, Mel. It has been another fun episode.
Oh, always. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, everything. We do have a TikTok up, but we don't have any videos up just yet, but they will be up. Also, we are working on our new website. So look out for that. And we are working on something special. So for those of you guys that love college football, the greatest team indies we will be working on. So be on the lookout for that. We're not giving away any details, but we are working on it, and it is coming very soon. So be on the lookout. So for 4th and 15, that is Mike Wachsman. I am Mel.